Welcome everyone. This is Joseph Nelson, and this is my YouTube channel, Next Home Network PDX. If this is your first time to my channel, and you want to know everything about living, eating, sleeping, all the varied lifestyles that are available to the Portland, Vancouver area, then hit the subscribe button and also ring the little bell so that you will be informed every time I make a new video. I get so many people calling who are looking to relocate to the area, and I absolutely love it. If you are thinking of relocating to this area or just need help figuring out where you want to live that fits your lifestyle, then give me a call, shoot me a text, send me an email, or even send me that carrier pigeon. However you want to get a hold of me, just know that I have your back when moving to the Portland, Vancouver greater area. And now to our featured story. The weird things about living in a floating home. They have what's called a honeypot. This is a 20-gallon or so container that all your sewage drains into by gravity. And this pot has a pump in it with a float, and it pumps the sewage from your home into a shared larger pipe that goes up to the parking lot and into the sewer. We are lower than the sewer line, and so it all has to be pumped. So that's the honeypot, and that's the way all of your toilet, shower, sink water gets into the sewer. Next, home leveling. Over the course of time, as you accumulate possessions or move furniture around, you're going to find that your house is leaning in one direction or the other. So there are contractors who specialize in leveling your home. This summer we put up a greenhouse. It weighs 2,000 pounds, and it made our deck lean to one side about 8 inches. And we put 7 blocks of foam. We didn't do it, but check out this video. We put 7 blocks of foam under the house. Moving in the summer is going to require a lot more work because the river level is lower. Ideally, if you could move in the winter, that would be a lot easier. There are also services with small barges that move people's possessions from one floating home to another so that you don't have to carry everything up to the parking lot and put it in a truck and then drive to where the new floating home is and then carry everything back down to the new floating home. No, they just come and you put it on your deck and they load it on a barge and they run it up to your new place and they unload it on your new deck. How's that for awesome? There are also contractors that specialize in maintaining and upgrading floating homes. They have little tugboats and little barges. One of them that I saw recently has a dumping trailer that you can hook to a truck, and he drives that trailer onto the barge, and then when it's full, he takes it to the boat ramp and hooks his truck up to the trailer and pulls it off the barge so that he's not having to handle and carry all of that material from the house up to the parking lot again and put it into a truck and drive it to the dump. No, he doesn't handle that material much at all. This is an example of the dozen or so contractors that work here in the area. You'll like this one. There are beavers in the area, and we witnessed a beaver climb up onto a guy's deck, chew his tree off, and swim back down the river with it. Storage is generally almost universally an issue on a floating home. They tend to not have a lot of storage. But JBMI has a storage facility owned by Columbia Crossing. It's not a related company, but there is an adjoining storage facility where you can rent anything from about a closet-sized space to a 15 by 30 foot garage. And a 15 by 30 foot garage, for instance, is about $275 a month. Vetting. Anybody moving into a floating home community will have to have a credit check and a background check. I've had clients that wanted to buy a $200,000 floating home for their son that had been on drugs and been in jail because it was a lot cheaper than buying a home on land. And I had to inform them that more than likely their son would not meet the criteria to be approved to live in the community. Everybody that lives in the community has to have a background check. If you are not the one paying the bill for the HOA fees, they're not going to require you to get a credit check. Here's a weird one. Bumping rights. Some mortgages have what is called bumping rights. You do not actually own your specific slip. You own a slip in this mortgage. And if somebody with more seniority likes your slip better, they can bump you out of your slip and swap slips with you. Now, this isn't quite as easy as it sounds because you're going to have to pay to disconnect all the utilities and move both houses and reconnect them back up, and that bill would be on the one that's bumping. But it is a concern, and it may be harder to get a loan for a home in a mortgage that has bumping rights. Stuff blows off decks. And unlike a home on land with a fence around your property, when a plastic chair blows off your deck, it's gone. So before storms, you better make sure stuff's tied down, especially if you don't have any railings around your deck. Let's talk about the bodies of water that floating homes in the Portland area are located in. Let's start with the Columbia River. The Columbia River is hundreds of miles long, and it originates in Canada. The tidal influence on the Columbia River extends from the ocean up to Bonneville Dam. The majority of the floating homes on the Columbia River are located at about 100 to 110 river miles from the ocean. And these homes all are influenced by tide. The Willamette River drains the entire Willamette Valley. From Eugene, it flows north through Portland and eventually to the Columbia River. The Willamette is influenced by tides up to the falls in Oregon City. So all the floating homes in the Portland area that are on the Willamette River are affected by tide. Besides tide, both the Willamette and Columbia Rivers are affected by the amount of water that is let out of the dams as a means of flood control. Besides tide, the river level is affected by the amount of water coming down the rivers. This combination of tide and river flow affects the height of the river significantly. During the '96 flood, both the Willamette and the Columbia Rivers hit historic levels. The Columbia at Vancouver crested at 27 feet, and this is above many of the dikes that are there to the average river height at Vancouver. To put this into perspective, is about 4 to 6 feet. There are times in both the Willamette and Columbia River, if you were to be in a kayak, it would be difficult to make upstream progress. There are other times when there is virtually no current at all. Water clarity differs tremendously from fairly clear to muddy brown. Water temperatures fluctuate in the winter from a low of about 48 to in the summer to a temperature of about 74 degrees. During seasonally high river levels, we see a lot of debris coming down the river, from small branches to whole trees. Typically, the pilings that hold floating homes in place are taller than the land which they are near. Therefore, if the water gets high, it spills out over large areas and causes flooding without putting the floating homes over the top of their pilings and going downstream. Community. These floating homes tend to have a high degree of community because, regardless of political persuasion, we all have something in common: love for the water. And as such, we have a lot of summer parties and events, well, when we're not fighting the coronavirus. The Christmas ships, especially on the Columbia and minorly on the Willamette, the Christmas ships pass by the floating home moorages. So you can have a front row seat to a Christmas ship parade, which at times has 30 boats in it that are decorated by Christmas lights. Amazon and FedEx do deliver to the floating home moorages. I spoke with the FedEx driver whose route includes all of the floating homes on both Hayden Island and Marine Drive. I asked him, what did you do to make your supervisor mad? This is a tough assignment because they're all gated communities and you have to go down the ramps and across the docks to deliver to these homes. But the fact remains, Amazon and FedEx deliver right to your door. If you have designs to buy a floating home and offset some of your use there by doing Airbnbs, for instance, these are typically not allowed in these moorages because of the background checks that must be done on people who are in the moorage. So before you purchase a floating home that you want to Airbnb when you're not there, we need to investigate this. Multnomah Channel, where there are quite a few floating home moorages, takes off from the Willamette just above the Columbia River and winds around Savi's Island until it gets to St. Helens. This is a very narrow stretch of water, and it is also affected by the tide and current that the Willamette and the Columbia face. At times, there are loose boats floating down the river past the floating home moorages. Recently, a moorage closed, and it had a high number of boat owners who had not paid their slip rent. And when it closed, they cut the boats loose. And we saw periodically 1 to 2 boats just float by. And some of these boats were 35 feet. Now, they probably didn't have any value, but the fact remains that it's one of the weird things we see while living in a floating home. This concludes this series on floating homes. I hope you found value in all 4 parts, and until the next time, I'll catch you later. Remember, if you're looking for that perfect place to live in the Portland, Vancouver area, you've got to call me or text me or email me or even send me that carrier pigeon. However you want to contact me, just know I have your back when moving to the Portland, Vancouver greater area. And until the next video, I'll catch you later.